Evasive and secretive, Riina creates a mystery room around his personality. One of the informants, Antonio Calderone, describes Riina as incredibly ignorant, but with intuition and intelligence. Very difficult to read. Many of those who had the opportunity to speak later spoke about the special qualities of husband and father that Riina displayed amid in his family. Some believe that the mobster had a great persuasive force, being at the same time a sentimental one. In the opinion of others, Riina did nothing but respect the simple but brutal code of the old Sicilian Mafia world, where force is the law and there is no contradiction between personal kindness and extreme aggression. His philosophy is pretty concise: if your finger hurts, it is indicated to cut your whole arm. To be sure. After the end of World War II, when the fascist dictatorship ended, the mafia structure in Corleone was almost decimated. The mafia was put back on its feet by Angelo Di Carlo and Vincenzo Colura, both of whom emigrated to the United States in the 1920s and returned for a specific purpose, namely rebuilding the Corleone family. Di Carlo, a former sailor during the war, had strong ties to politics. His wish was that Navarra, who was his cousin, be the head of the new family. For this, he needed the approval of the most important Sicilian leaders of the time. Once the formalities are completed, Navarra becomes boss, Colura his deputy, and Leo Luca Leggio, counselor. Salvatore Riina was born on November 16, 1930, in Corleone, a town far from being included in the business of the then powerful Sicilian Mafia. When Toto Riina was 12 years old, his father Giovanni Riina was emptying the explosives from a military shell to sell the metal inside as scrap. Giovanni and one of his boys, 7-year-old Francesco, were killed, while another son, Gaetano, was injured when the shell slid from Giovanni's grip and burst. Toto was the only one who escaped with his life, essentially becoming the family's leader. Recruited by the mafia, Toto, unrestrained by his father's tight hand, quickly turned his back on the life of a peasant and hung around in Corleone's piazza, promising his pals that he would not die poor. Luciano Leggio, a hitman for local doctor and Capo Mafia Michele Navarra, hired him and Provenzano. Stealing animals and selling the slaughtered flesh was a lucrative business for the three of them. Riina and his pals fought Domenico di Matteo with rods and knuckle dusters following the procession of the crucified Christ in Corleone in May 1949. Another brawl broke out outside town 10 days later. It ended with bullets this time. Riina used an automatic to fire a half-dozen bullets. Di Matteo was killed by a bullet, and Riina was injured as well. In his hospital bed, he was apprehended. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison after speaking abusively to the judge in court while in chains. Meanwhile, Leggio and Navarra were feuding and Navarra vetoed a major building project Leggio was involved in. One of Navarra's lieutenants was then assaulted by Leggio. Leggio was injured in the arm in an ambush set up by Navarra. Navarra believed that honor had been gratified. He was completely wrong. Navarra was taken home from Lercara Fritti, the birthplace of Lucky Luciano, on August 2, 1958, by a doctor who had no mafia ties. Navarra was unarmed and didn't have a bodyguard with him. Leggio, Provenzano, and Riina attacked them with submachine guns and automatic pistols. They shot 124 bullets into the automobile, 92 of which struck Navarra. They made peace overtures to Navarra loyalists a month later. Riina was taken to a mafia gathering unarmed and alone. He responded, "Who's dead is dead. The dearly departed has left us. Let's consider the living." He crossed himself solemnly. Provenzano and another guy came and began fire with sawn-off shotguns before anybody could respond. One of the men from Navarra was shot in the face. The others ran away. A 2-year-old child was injured by a stray bullet during the subsequent chase through the streets of Corleone. Provenzano was struck in the head and was declared dead. 2 ladies and an 8-year-old daughter were hurt. However, no one had seen anything when the cops came. When questioned in his hospital bed, Provenzano stated he was on his way to the movies when he passed out. The fight that goes unnoticed. When the war broke out, Riina swiftly rose to become one of Leggio's most trusted assassins, never shying away from killing Novara supporters and any inconvenient witnesses. The final shot was usually to month, warning anyone who knew anything to remain silent. The omerta, or code of silence, was enforced to the letter. A total of 50 persons were killed, with another 22 attempted murders. Victims were initially shot on the streets, stores, and bars, as well as at their homes. The Luppera Bianca, or white shotgun, followed. People just vanished, their remains dumped into ravines, dissolved in lime, or incinerated over open flames on massive grills. In the alleyway where Ninetta resided, Provenzano was injured while attempting to ambush Novara Lieutenant Francesco Paolo Streva. As he made his getaway, a lady appeared to clean up the blood path. Streva was ambushed for the second time 4 months later. Leggio and his 2 lieutenants, Provenzano and Riina, were now in charge in Corleone after he was slain and dumped in a ditch with his 2 bodyguards and their guard dog. Leggio, on the other hand, was not satisfied. He desired to relocate to Palermo. Another mafia fight erupted as a result of the migration. It grew so fierce that his soldiers were forced to flee. Riina was apprehended in a police roadblock in December 1963. He was detained in Palermo's Uxierdone prison, surrounded by incarcerated Palermo dons dressed in silk robes and with silver cigarette holders. They despised the Corleonesi, which fueled Riina's ambition even more. Leggio was caught 6 months after Riina was captured. Provenzano was also picked up. All 3 refused to cooperate with the government, and in 1969 they appeared in the dock together in Bari along with another 61 mafiosi. They were all acquitted due to the jury's intimidation. Riina was only accused of stealing a driver's license and received a 6-month sentence, which he had already served. Calogero Bagarella, Ninetta's brother, joined Provenzano's hit crew in the ongoing Palermo conflict to take out Michele, the Cobra, Cavateo. They stormed Cavateo's offices, dressed in police costumes. Calogero Bagarella was seriously wounded after being shot. Also wounded was Provenzano. He used a machine gun to do the job, though. He struck Cavateo's head with the butt till it caved in when it jammed. Riina made a brief public appearance during the funeral of Calogero. Leggio was ill, so Riina and Provenzano joined the Capo Mafia of Sinisai, Gaetano Badalamenti, and Stefano, the Prince, Bontate in Palermo. Riina took advantage of the chance to learn everything he could about the Sicilian Mafia's inner workings. It was advantageous to him. Leggio's representative on the Mafia Triumvirate, which also included Badalamenti and Bontate, was Riina after Leggio relocated to Milan. Bontate, on the other hand, insulted him and attempted to have him imprisoned because he was a peasant. Despite this, Riina was appointed to the larger commission that succeeded the Triumvirate. Leggio was imprisoned for the murder of Novara in 1974, and Riina became the Corleonesi's new leader. He wanted to control the heroin trade, so he ordered hitmen on cops, judges, and prosecutors who tried to stop him. Reporters who were snooping about were also unwelcome. Ninetta's brother Leo Luca assassinated Mario Francesi, a Giornale di Sicilia journalist, in 1979. Then a new mafia war erupted in Sicily. Boss of bosses. Tommaso Buscetta, a convicted murderer and war loser, became a pentito in 1983. He is the first senior mafia figure to testify against the state's evidence. He disclosed that the mafia was a single organization led by Riina and overseen by a commission or cupola. Riina planned a terrorist-style incident in 1984, called the Christmas Massacre, to deflect attention away from the inquiry. A bomb exploded in an Apennine tunnel between Florence and Bologna, killing 17 people and wounding 267 others. Nonetheless, Buscetta's testimony led to the 1986 Maxi trial, which ended in the conviction of 338 mafiosi. Riina was sentenced to life and prison in his absence. He maintained his campaign of assassinating competitors to keep his title of boss of bosses, while also establishing political ties. Riina ordered the death of former Palermo mayor Salvatore Riina, as well as prosecuting magistrates Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino, after the maxi trial verdicts were confirmed. The assassinations of Falcone and Borsellino sparked public indignation, and the acting San Giuseppe clan chief, Balduccio di Maggio, fled Sicily and became a pentito, fearing Riina's fury. He informed the cops he had a general notion of Riina's whereabouts. In 1993, the international press reported that one of the biggest mobsters had finally fallen into the clutches of the law. After decades of flight in which he was ruthless with those who stood in his way, Riina was caught, tried, and sentenced to 11 life sentences. The empire he had built with so much toil and human sacrifice collapsed, especially after the arrest of his two sons. His influence behind the scratches is minimal, and the place at the head of the mafia was taken over by Provenzano. Although Provenzano became the Corleoneses became titular head, it was thought that the faction was run by Ninetta's brother Leoluca Bagarella until his arrest in 1995. Provenzano was arrested on April 11, 2006, near Corleone, after many years in hiding. Riina died in a medically induced coma following 2 procedures in the jail section of the Maggiore Hospital in Parma on November 17, 2017, one day after his 87th birthday. The reason for death has not been revealed. According to a magistrate, he was still regarded as the Cosa Nostra's leader at the time of his death. The church and Archbishop Michele Panisi refused Riina a public funeral, so he was buried secretly in his birthplace of Corleone.